My son Jonathan has always been the quiet, thoughtful type, the kind of boy who never caused a fuss growing up. As a child, he spent most of his time building little wooden cars with me in the garage, or helping his mother plant flowers on Saturday mornings. So when he told me he had met someone he wanted to marry, I was thrilled. Her name was Claire, and she worked in marketing at a trendy company downtown. She was smart, fashionable, very polished, and very different from the kind of people our family usually spent time with. But I welcomed her warmly, because my son loved her. The first time she came over for dinner, I wore my usual jeans and a button-down shirt, the same kind of outfit I had worn for years. I cracked a few silly dad jokes, offered her an extra helping of casserole, and tried my best to make her feel at home. She smiled politely, but something in her eyes told me she was studying every little thing about our old house, my outdated furniture, and maybe even the way I talked. At the time, I ignored it. I thought she was just nervous. A few months later, Jonathan asked if I would host a small gathering for Claire's bridal shower. Only family and a few close friends, he said. I was excited, genuinely excited. I spent days cleaning, polishing every old picture frame, even repainting the porch. I wanted everything to be perfect for her. But 2 days before the shower, I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear. Jonathan had come over to drop off some decorations. He thought I was out back, but I was actually in the hallway, fixing a loose coat hook. His phone rang, and because the house was quiet, I heard every word of the conversation. He answered cheerfully at first, but then his voice softened. "Claire, come on, she's trying her best." There was a long pause. Then I heard her voice faintly from the phone speaker. She said she didn't want the shower at my house anymore because, and I remember the words exactly, "Your mom is too embarrassing for my friends." I froze, not the kind of freeze where you stop moving, but the kind where your heart stops for a moment. Embarrassing me. I stood there, gripping the edge of the wall, listening as she complained about my old furniture, my strange sense of humor, even my laugh. She said her friends were high class and she didn't want them judging her future family. Jonathan defended me for a bit, but eventually he sighed and said he would talk to me. I quietly went to the kitchen and washed my hands in the sink, even though they weren't dirty. When Jonathan came in looking worried, I pretended I hadn't heard anything. He explained gently that Claire wanted a change of plans. I nodded, smiled, said it was absolutely fine. But when he left, I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the wood grain, feeling something inside me collapse. Parents aren't supposed to admit when their children hurt them. We're supposed to be strong, understanding, forgiving. But that night, I felt like I had been dismissed, like I wasn't good enough for the life my son was stepping into. I barely slept the next morning. I made a decision. If I was such an embarrassment, then they didn't need me to host anything. I canceled the bridal shower. Not angrily, not dramatically. I simply sent a message in the family group chat. The bridal shower at my house is canceled. Claire may choose a venue that suits her tastes better. I wish you all a lovely event. Within minutes, Jonathan called me, panicked. He asked why, what happened, and that Claire didn't mean anything by her comments. I listened quietly as he tried to smooth things over. He said she was just stressed, that brides sometimes say things they don't mean. I told him the truth. I said I overheard everything. Silence filled the line. Then he apologized, not quickly, not defensively, but slowly, with the kind of guilt that comes from realizing you disappointed the person who raised you. He came over that evening alone. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, looking like the same little boy who used to break things and come confess with nervous eyes. He said he didn't agree with what Claire said, but he wanted to keep the peace. I told him I understood, but understanding didn't erase the sting. He asked me to reconsider, to still host the shower, but I shook my head. Hosting a celebration for someone who thought I was beneath her would have been humiliating. I told him that Claire deserved the environment she wanted, and that I wouldn't stand in the way of that. When he left, he hugged me tighter than usual. I think he finally realized how much his life was changing, and how far away he was drifting. Days passed. I didn't hear from Claire, not one apology, not one message. Instead, she planned her bridal shower at a fancy rooftop lounge downtown. I wasn't invited. Jonathan told me gently that she thought the event would be more curated, without extended family. Curated. What a word. I didn't argue. I wished him a good time and told him to send me pictures. He didn't single quotes. The wedding grew closer. I kept telling myself that I just had to get through the big day, smile for the photos, and let things settle afterward. But a week before the wedding, something unexpected happened. Claire's mother showed up at my door, a well-dressed woman with diamond earrings and a stiff posture. She introduced herself politely but with an air of superiority. She said Claire was upset about the drama I caused. I stood there stunned. Drama. I had said nothing publicly. I had fought no one, she continued, explaining that her daughter had high standards and that sometimes people from different backgrounds feel intimidated. She didn't say it directly, but the implication hung in the air like a bad smell. People like me were the problem. I finally spoke. I told her calmly that I had no intention of competing with their lifestyle. I told her I loved my son and wanted him to be happy, but I also told her that respect was not optional, and I would not be talked down to or dismissed in my own home. Her expression shifted, just slightly, as if she hadn't expected me to hold my ground. She gave a curt nod, said she would speak with Claire, and left. 2 days later, Jonathan came over again, but this time, something was different. He looked torn apart inside. He told me he had confronted Claire about everything, the comments, the disrespect, the lack of apology, and for the first time, he saw a side of her that frightened him. He asked her why she didn't want me around, why she always rolled her eyes when I was mentioned, why she never tried to build a relationship with his family. Her answer, he said, was cold and simple, because your mom isn't my kind of people. That broke him. He realized the woman he was about to marry didn't just dislike my house or my humor. She looked down on me, on where he came from, even on who he used to be. The wedding was postponed. Not cancelled, postponed. Jonathan said he needed time to think, and Claire was furious, but he stood firm. He said no major life decision should be made with contempt in the room. Weeks passed before they reconciled, and only after Claire came to me herself. She didn't cry, she didn't beg, but she did something that mattered more. She admitted she was wrong. She said she let her fear of judgment control her, that she wanted to fit her friends' expectations so badly that she pushed away the people who actually cared. She apologized for calling me embarrassing. I accepted her apology, not because it erased the hurt, but because Jonathan loved her, and because families don't grow by holding grudges, they grow through honesty. Even when it hurts. Today, Claire is different, softer, more grounded. She comes over for dinner sometimes. She laughs at my jokes now. Real laughter, not the stiff, polite kind. She helps my wife in the kitchen and sits on the same old couch. She once turned her nose up at Dot and Jonathan. He thanks me often for setting boundaries, for not yelling, for not lashing out. He says it taught him something about dignity, about how love doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. I still remember the day I canceled the bridal shower. At the time, it felt like a defeat, but now, I think it was the moment everything began to change, because sometimes, the only way to teach people how to treat you is to stop letting them treat you any less. And in the end, that small act of strength saved not just my relationship with my son, but his future marriage too. After Claire's apology, things didn't magically become perfect overnight, but something subtle began to shift between us. It was small at first, the way she'd step through the door and give a genuine smile, not the guarded, polite one she used to wear. She'd compliment the smell of food in the kitchen, or ask how my day had been. Little gestures, but meaningful. Jonathan noticed it too. One evening, he leaned in while we were sitting on the couch and whispered, "I think she's really trying, Mom." And for the first time, I believed him. A week later, Claire suggested having dinner at my house again, not because she had to, not because it was expected, but because she wanted to. She walked into the kitchen and asked if she could help cook. I handed her the vegetables to chop, and though she held the knife awkwardly, like someone who'd only seen cooking on Instagram reels, she tried. She really tried. We talked while we cooked, and there was a softness in her voice, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. She told me she had grown up in a place where everyone compared everything: clothes, houses, jobs, relationships. She said she spent years feeling judged, and somewhere along the way, she learned to judge first so she wouldn't get hurt later. I stirred the pot quietly, letting her finish. She didn't look at me when she said it, but her voice cracked just slightly, and it felt like I was hearing her truth for the first time. I told her gently that no one needed to be perfect in my home, not her, not even me. The moment was fragile, but real. The new wedding date approached with less tension and more laughter. This time, Claire asked me to be more involved. She wanted me to come dress shopping with her and her mother. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, but because I didn't want to intrude. But when she insisted, I agreed. At the boutique, I saw a different side of her. She tried on a dozen dresses, spinning in front of mirrors, giggling, asking me what I thought. Her mother, elegant and sharp-tongued, made a few pointed remarks about tulle and lace, but for once, Claire didn't hide behind her mom's opinions. She looked at me directly and asked, "Do you really like it?" I remember telling her that the right dress wasn't the one that impressed other people. It was the one she could imagine herself happy in. She stared at herself for a long moment before choosing a simple, stunning gown with soft sleeves, and when she hugged me afterward, it wasn't the stiff, "I guess this is polite" hug. It was warm, real. As the wedding day got closer, Jonathan visited more often. Sometimes he came alone, sometimes with Claire. The house, once awkward and tense, now filled with laughter again. One night, they came over with slices of cake for us to taste. Claire held a notebook, writing down opinions like a determined wedding planner. She teased Jonathan for choosing the sweetest cake, and teased me for preferring something plain. We all laughed, and I realized how long it had been since we'd laughed together like that. The night before the wedding, Claire called me. Her voice sounded nervous. She told me she feared she hadn't done enough to repair things between us. She said she still felt ashamed of how she had treated me, and she didn't know if she truly deserved my forgiveness. I assured her that forgiveness wasn't about deserving, it was about deciding to move forward. I told her that I believed she had grown, that she had listened, and that she had tried. And sometimes trying is the bravest thing a person can do. On the wedding day, I watched her walk down the aisle. The sun streamed through the windows, making her look almost like she was glowing. Jonathan's face lit up the moment he saw her. In that moment, everything, the pain, the hurtful words, the awkward dinners, felt like they had been part of a long, imperfect journey toward a better understanding. During the reception, Claire approached me and held my hands. She looked me straight in the eyes, no tension, no fear, and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I told her the truth. "I never gave up on you. I just stepped back when I needed to, and you stepped forward when it mattered." Later that night, as family members danced and music filled the hall, I watched Jonathan spin his new wife around the floor. She laughed with her head thrown back, full of joy, and he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. I realized then that the woman he married wasn't the same woman who once called me embarrassing. She had faced her flaws, she had owned her mistakes, and she had chosen to grow from them. Weeks after the wedding, Claire began visiting me alone, sometimes, not for big, dramatic reasons, just for coffee, conversation, or to share stories about their new apartment. She'd sit at the same kitchen table where I once cried after hearing her hurtful words, but now the air felt warm, comfortable. One afternoon, she showed me photos of her childhood, the small apartment, the strict routines, the pressure-filled birthday parties. As I listened, it became clear. She had spent her whole life trying to impress people who rarely felt impressed. Maybe that was why she feared being judged by her friends. Maybe that was why she judged me first. But she wasn't that person anymore. Not fully. Not anymore. Jonathan once told me something late at night over tea. He said, "Mom, I think your strength gave her strength. You didn't shout. You didn't fight. You just set a boundary, and she learned from that." I never thought of it that way. I had only done what I needed to do to protect my dignity. But maybe sometimes, protecting yourself teaches others how to value you. Today, when Claire enters my home, she walks in confidently, comfortably, like she belongs. She laughs freely. She compliments my food. She hugs me longer. And sometimes, she even slips her arm in mine, like a daughter would. Looking back, canceling the bridal shower wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of self-respect. And that simple act reshaped everything that came after: my relationship with my son, my bond with Claire, even her own understanding of how love and respect truly work. Some stories change with big moments. Ours changed with one quiet message in a family group chat, and maybe that's why, today, when people talk about family, I remind them, you don't have to be loud to stand up for yourself. You just have to be firm. And in the end, love will grow exactly where honesty is allowed to breathe.